how that works because I believe that people need to really understand what's going on. In the late 1980s, I was working with a team of people that were working on the third space shuttle called Discovery. This is it right here. This is an award that I actually received from working with the team that actually put together the electronics for this particular spacecraft. And nobody will forget how they took a person from, Earth around the moon and back and landed, safely in Houston. I never forget that. But now, the word discovery, okay? The word discovery means this. It means to find out, to make clear, to uncover, to seek the truth, okay? I never forget how I had heard this story one time. And the story kind of made me think about questions, all right? Now, the story is really about a man. His name was President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. And he, in the early 1960s, he said, we're going to put a man on the moon. But now, how do they put a man on the moon? They had to ask questions, all right? Well, they asked a question, for example, how will we do it? What is the information we need? What's the purpose of our mission? How far is the moon to the Earth and back? What kind of equipment do we need to have? They were asking very, very specific questions. Well, what I find is this. If we begin to learn how to ask questions, like in sales, okay, and begin to find out what people need, we can do some things. So in sales, there's a process or a step called discovery. In that discovery step, we find out the wants, needs, and desires of our prospects. Okay? Now, let's say, for example, what do we mean by asking questions? So let's define question, all right? When we define the question, when we define it, a question means the act of asking or inquiring. Okay? Now, let's say, for example, it's a query. Inquiry into or discussion of some problem or doubtful matter. Okay? Now, basic open-ended questions are very simple. But now, let's say, for example, the kinds of questions that you want to ask, you want to ask questions that don't give you a yes or a no answer. For example, if you say, well, could you do this? Answer could be what? Yes or no. You don't want that. Would you? Yes or no. When you get a yes or no answer, it does not give you enough information. Now, what we want to do is this. We want to ask questions which are open-ended questions, which gives you more specific information. Okay? There is something which I call the 5 wives and the 1 husband. And the 5 wives and the 1 husband goes like this. There was a man who had 5 wives. And the 5 wives he had were very inquiring. So the first wife asked, well, who are you going to go see? And he said, well, I'm going over here to see Marilyn because she's very nice. The second wife says, well, why do you want to go see her? And the husband said, well, I want to go see her because I've been thinking about some things that she did was very nice. The third wife said, well, where will you meet her? And the husband said, well, I will meet her at Starbucks in a certain location. The fourth wife says, well, when will you meet her in this location? And the husband said, well, I'll meet her tomorrow morning about 7 o'clock in the morning. And then the fifth wife says, well, what will you do when you meet her? And the poor husband said, well, how did I get such inquisitive wives? Well, my whole point is this. If you begin to use these words, who, why, where, when, what, and how, in front of anything you want to ask, you get more information. It opens it up. Now, as it begins to open it up, it gives you information that will help you to make better decisions. That makes sense? Now, once you hear the information, what do you do with the information? Well, first you listen to hear what you hear. Then you use the information process, which will help you either influence or help you to persuade them into buying your product and or service. Okay? So it's very important to understand that. All right? Now, let's say, for example, everything starts with a question. Everything starts with a question. For example, think about it. When you have a car accident, okay, or a car crash, it starts with a question. They ask you questions about what happened. All right? Let's say it's a robbery. They ask you a question. Well, what happened in a robbery? If it's a book, the book answers the question. If you go to a movie, the movie is a question, is answered. Everything starts with a question. Now, if you have if you have to ask questions, okay, before and after whatever you want, it will make you so much better. But what I find, many people don't ask enough questions, or no questions at all. Let's say you want some money, okay? Well, ask some questions. Well, ask, what do you need money for? When do you need the money? How will you use the money? Ask those kinds of questions. As you ask the questions, you become more clear in the purpose for the money, okay? Now, no matter what you are doing, always ask questions. We think by asking questions. Think about that. We think by asking questions. Now, I'm going to give you 5 tips. Just 5 tips I believe will help you. The first tip is this. When making a major decision, no matter what it is, write down a minimum of 10 open-ended questions you're going to ask. Now, why 10, Nate? Well, because when you write down 10 questions, your thought process becomes clearer. You begin to say, oh, you know what? I should ask about this, that, and other. But write down at least 10 open-ended questions. Number 2, all right? When you're unsure about what to do about a certain situation, write 5 open-ended questions about you that you can ask yourself, and then answer those questions. I did this myself. As many of you know, I had a stroke, and it affected my left side. But it's okay, because I began to ask myself, now what can I do to make myself more productive, better? How can I do it? When can I do it? Where can I do it? And I begin to become more productive in my everyday decisions. Okay? All right, next. Always ask questions before signing anything. All right? Even if you're unsure about the questions you want to ask, you sound smarter than you think. So ask the questions. As you ask the questions, the other party thinks that you are inquiring about things, but you just want to make sure it's a good thing to do. That's all. Okay? Next, number 4. Listen attentively to answer your questions. So in other words, listen attentively to the questions, or to the answer to the questions, okay? And the last thing, number 5, is this. Listen to understand, not to respond. When you listen to understand, you get to understand what's going on. For example, let's say, if I begin to tell you about this space shuttle and how long it is and where it came from, you may get bored as you're listening to me. Most people listen to respond, not to understand. So when you listen to understand, not to respond. Now, this has been Nate, and I really appreciate it. Always ask questions, and you'll be surprised what you can learn. Okay? Thanks. Talk to you soon.